Okay, good morning. I have to do a video on N1MM Logger and its Spectrum Monitor. I know there are a couple other videos out there at least on this, but I wanted to go through a few things that I've learned, and it is a really nice addition. It'll be fun to use in contests, but you can also set it up with just a general log if you want to, and just use it going up and down the band, making contacts, and then logging your QSOs. Okay, first things first, I'm using the Icom 7300, and we need to make sure that it's set up for the Spectrum monitor. You touch menu, set, connectors, and I'm going to go up to the top. I normally don't change anything in here, and I haven't had to. I may make some adjustments on the AF output level, or I may make an adjustment on the USB mod level every once in a while. It depends on what computer I'm using. So it all stays the same. I'm going to go into CIV in just a second. Get down here. Now I've been using two cables, and this time I'm only using one cable. It's the USB cable, but I haven't had to change any of these settings. And I'm going to go up to CIV. This is real important. If you haven't unlinked from remote, you'll have to do that. You want to be unlinked from remote. I'm going to go to the top. I think that all this is the default. What has changed, I make this USB baud rate. Now this is a USB cable, the baud rate 115.2, the highest that it can be. And the echo back is on. I believe that's the default, but we want to set that high. Okay, let me exit out. Now let's go over to the computer and take a look at it. Okay, if you go over to your computer and look up the device manager, as I mentioned, I'm just using one cable this time. It's the USB cable, and this you download the driver initially from Icom, and on my computer it's COM4. So I'll double click on it, and we'll take a look at the properties. The port settings, I've raised that to 115.2. Didn't have to change anything else. If you're using a laptop, I found on my laptop that I had to uncheck allow the computer to turn off this device to save power. I didn't want it turning it off. I don't know if that helped or not. But anyway, we'll click OK. This will be the port that I'm going to be using in N1MM Logger. Okay, once you have your computer set up and that port, and you know which COM port you're going to be using, open up N1MM, and I'd encourage you to download the latest version of it, because this Spectrum monitor has changed a number of times. And the first place you want to go, if you're not used to N1MM, it is a pretty easy program once you get into it, get your feet wet a little bit. Click on Configure Ports, and the hardware, I'm using COM4, and that's the radio, the Icom 7300, and I've got CW and other checked. Let's go over to set, make sure everything's right there. 115.2. Don't believe I had to change anything else here. You noticed in my Icom 7300 menu, I'm using DTR for CW, so that's set there. RTS, I've got it always off. It seems to be working for me. This setup works for me. And of course, this is Radio 1. I'm going to click OK. And this you don't have to do anything there. Function keys, digital modes. I'll get into this later when we start doing FSK with a USB cable. But for now, you really just need to set up your radio, COM4, and then your radio, and you might have another radio. But this is for the 7300. And click OK. Shouldn't get an error. And then open up the Spectrum Monitor, you click on the window and go down to Spectrum Display. And it takes it a second to start up. Now I want to point out something, that if you don't have the Spectrum scope displayed on your 7300, look at the top right, if it's not displayed, your Spectrum scope won't work. So even if I go into menu and set, you'll see that the Spectrum Monitor, N1MM Logger Spectrum Monitor, stopped on me. If I let it sit there long enough, it switches back, the radio, it'll switch back and go to the Spectrum scope screen. So if this isn't on, it's not going to work. If I try to go and turn it off, we'll see what happens. It's still there. Hit that, and you'll see it stops it in the N1MM Logger program. So it has to be displayed. It can be a small one or it can be a large one, but it's got to be displayed. Okay, if you open it up and you're still not seeing anything, I think 1 or 2 times I opened mine and I had to adjust the noise floor. This is the line here, and if you hold your mouse over the top section, a little help balloon will pop up, and you use your mouse wheel to adjust that noise floor. Raise it up and you'll see fewer red dots down here, and I'll show you what those red dots are in just a minute. But anyway, you can lower the noise floor and more of them, of course, show up. So that's one thing to look out for. If you still don't have a display, maybe it's in your settings. I'm right-handed, I have a right-handed mouse. I right-click and it brings up a menu. And you just want to run down these, the important ones, if you're not showing the Spectrum Monitor. The Spectrum source, and that's Radio 1. Remember when we were in Configure, Radio 1, we set that to the Icom 7300, that's on COM 4. Make sure that that's checked. And then the associated radios, of course, Radio 1, we only have one radio. Radio 1, so when I click in here, it will change frequency on the radio. The rest of this stuff, some of it's kind of nice. If I click on that one, I get a different looking Spectrum Monitor. You can see the dark blue are the signals, and then the lighter blue are the peak hold, I guess. It keeps it up a little bit longer, but that's kind of nice. I'm going to right click again and snap to signal. I've tried that. I've tried a few others in here, and they're just kind of fun to play with. But if you do that, the Spectrum source, set the associated radio, you should have a Spectrum Monitor going. Let's take a look at contrast and static. This is the contrast. If I raise it up, it's going to turn lighter. I like it a little bit lower. And the static, I played around with it and I've set it too high at times. And when I set it too high, I'll get a message up here. Let me see if I can make it pop up. I'll get a message at the top that tells me the turn down static sensitivity. So I'll just turn it down. And somewhere right in here has been pretty good for me. Okay, you'll notice the DX spots up here. Let's take a look at that. If you have your telnet going and you're connected to a cluster, you should see some DX spots. If you don't see any DX spots, there is a second menu over here. Click on that, and I've got selected non-dupes and dupes up here at the top. So if you're not seeing any spots, maybe that's the reason. There's a few more settings in here. This one to show the red signal markers. You can get rid of that if you don't want it. And there's a few other settings. The auto, you can make this a horizontal or a vertical, and it can look like the band map if you change it over to vertical. Let's take a look and see what what that looks like. There you go. And of course you can narrow it up. Go back to column. Okay, so I've been playing around with it, and you know, I noticed something else. I was watching another user on YouTube. I believe it was Tom. And I've got my radio. I normally like fixed mode. And if you take a look at the radio, I'm going to bring it up here. If you take a look at the radio, this button down here, we're in fixed right now. And I really like fixed mode because I can change frequency easy by clicking, and this stays the same. Let me close that. This stays the same. I've got it set up right now. I'm on the CW portion of the band, and fixed mode, and that's just my band edge that I have set on the 7300. That's just the band edge, so it's determined by the radio. But I was watching on another video, if I hit center and I go to center, I kind of like this better for the Spectrum monitor. And I see a signal over here. I can click on it, and it jumps pretty good. It doesn't skew anything too much down here. If I see another signal, I can jump to it, and it, you know, constantly puts me in the center. But the other thing that I like about it is I can change the width, the band spread. And let me show you. I can zoom in using this plus sign. If the band's really crowded, I can zoom in even closer. I can zoom out. And look at that. I can see quite a bit of the band. So that's something to play with. It just depends on what you like best. This on the left hand side will also show the number of stations, but that number constantly changes. Alright, so I think that should do it. If you find this video informative and useful, please give me a thumbs up. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching 73 Good DX.